Your Highness, thank you very much for accepting to do this interview with the Voice of America. If I may, I would like to start with Iran's ballistic missile programs. There are reports that Iran has not stopped its development of the ballistic missile programs. Do you think the United States or Saudi Arabia or the international community, should they be concerned about that?
I think everybody should be concerned, and not just Saudi Arabia and the United States. As I understand it, I am not an official who is being shown official intelligence reports and other means of information. I just read what is in the papers and what is shown on television, etc. So my take on this Iranian missile program is that part of the restrictions on Iran as a result of the nuclear deal was this issue of the development of missiles. Now we've seen in the press as well that Iranian officials have denied that. And I think this is part of the problem that I, as an observer, has with the Iran nuclear deal. That there seem to be issues in that deal that have not been brought out and put on the table. So is the missile program restricted or is it not? The present American administration says yes, the Iranian leaders say no. So if there are articles in the deal that have not been published, I think they should be published.
I'm going to come back to the deal, sir, but Iran is saying that this ballistic missile program is for defense purposes, and no one should tell them what to do, and they are free to do whatever they would like. They don't get anybody's authorization. What do you
I don't
think
know
of that?
how the present Iranian leadership defines defensive purposes. I just attended a conference where I reviewed the declarations of Iranian officials, not just from the military, but also from the civilian aspects of Iranian leadership. They boast about 200,000 IRGC and Iranian army personnel being deployed in 5 countries by name. They say in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, and in Yemen. So if the military leaders boast about that, what is defensive? Are these missiles supposed to protect these 200,000 troops that are spread in Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Pakistan, and Afghanistan? Or are they supposed to protect the territory of what is officially recognized as Iran? So they have to be more forthcoming in justifying these aggressive programs that they have adopted.
On the JCPOA, sir, as you know, that mid-October, the president has actually said that he might not recertify Iran's adherence to the JCPOA. What do critics, including President Trump, what do they mean when they say that Iran has not adhered to the spirit of the nuclear deal?
I cannot speak for President Trump or other critics. My criticism of the agreement goes beyond than the articles of adherence to the agreements as agreed between the parties. It goes to the whole purpose of the agreement, which is supposed to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. Now, as I understand it, the agreement, when it was initially signed, was supposed to last 15 years. All right. Once that is over, what happens next? We know that Iran, under the agreement, will continue to enrich uranium in a specific level. That means that they will develop the know-how and the techniques to enrich at a higher level, which allows for then the development of nuclear weapon capability. So on the day that the agreement is finished, is terminated, my view is that under the present leadership in Iran, they will race for developing a nuclear weapon without anybody restricting them. So this is my criticism of the agreement. It's more that what's going to happen the day after rather than the present application of the agreement or not. That is for officials in governments and the signatories to the agreement to keep us apprised of.
Your Highness, you mentioned Iran's assertive behavior in the region. This has led into several incidents, naval incidents also, especially Iran's aggressive military posture in the region. How do you think it should be dealt with?
Well, I think the present leadership should stop doing that.
How do you make them stop doing that?
Well, you have to put pressure on them internationally. When you look at what is happening, for example, in Syria, Iran is in support of a person who himself admits that he is killing his own citizens. He identifies them as terrorists. 500,000 victims of this person's aggression against his own people, with the help of whom? With the help of Iran and Russia. That is unacceptable. So the world community should be coming together to tell Iran and Russia that their support for this terrorist should stop.
How would you convince Russia or China, because there are lots of business dealing with those countries?
Well, in the same way. Particularly in the West, they have taken action against Russia, for example, on the issue of Crimea. I think they should be able to find some measures to take on convincing the Russians that their support for this terrorist is counterproductive and that it will bring harm to Russia. And I'm sure the Russian leadership is wise and they want to promote their interests and so on. So they have to realize that they're antagonizing not just the Syrian people, but the 1.2 billion Muslims around the world and being identified with Bashar al-Assad. That has to be highlighted in the media and in other means of convincing the Russian leadership that their activity will bring them harm rather than good.
So you think it's these types of pressures and exposures maybe by the media. In the same token, I'd like to ask you about human rights in Iran. About human rights in Iran. And as you know, that there have been dual citizens who have been on bogus charges, on fake charges. They have been arrested in Iran, the internet is censored and so forth. What type of leverage does the West have to make Iran abide by its commitments? Is this the same way as you were talking about its meddling in the region? Pressure? What other means are possible to do that?
When the West wanted to put pressure on Iran on the issue of the nuclear development in Iran, it found the means to do that by the sanctions that they applied, which led to Iran negotiating on the nuclear program that they had before. So I think the West knows what should be done. The means and the wherewithal of the sanctions that had succeeded in bringing Iran to the negotiating table on the nuclear issue can equally be used to bring Iran to negotiate on issues like human rights and other things. Their aggression in Syria, their aggression in Yemen, their aggression in Lebanon, in Iraq, etc. So there are means, and these countries know what the means are.
And you think that the other countries who are doing business with Iran, the European countries and so forth, how could they be convinced that there is a risk, or is there a risk to do business with Iran?
I'm not a businessman myself, so it would be presumptuous of me to speak for business community. My understanding is that for the West to do business with Iran now, that the West will have to bring the capital to invest in Iran in order to do business in Iran. And it is not going to be Iranian financial resources that will bring these businesses, but rather Western financial resources themselves by giving loans to Iranian businesses, etc. The big question mark, as I understand it, in any business is what is the legal framework for a successful business engagement with any country. And apparently the present setup in the Iranian judicial system under the present regime is porous and full of exceptions and undocumented restrictions and literally haphazard dealings. So those who bring their capital to invest in Iran are doing so at their own risk. And I think if the West is looking to make a lot of profit from Iran, well, we'll wait and see if they succeed or not.
My last question, Your Highness, is about what is happening inside Iran. There is a rift of the so-called rifts, or reports that there is a rift between different groups, the reformists and the conservatives and so forth. What do you make of that? Do you think this is just for inside and outside consumption, or are there really disputes and there are people, there's one particular group who would like to open up to the West and so forth? What are your thoughts on that?
Let me preface that by saying the following. We across the Gulf from Iran are bound to Iran by three factors that are unchanging. One is geography. We'll always be neighbors. Two is history. The interchange and the intermixing between the people from that area that is identified as Iran and the people from the area that is identified as Arabia has been going on for thousands of years. And there are tribal and family links that bind the two peoples together historically. And the third thing that binds us together are the Shahada. La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. Both of us are fully committed to this. So these factors should be working to bring us together. Unfortunately, because of the aggression of the present Iranian regime in all the countries that I mentioned, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Yemen, etc., these factors that should bring us together are not succeeding in doing so. What is happening inside Iran, as I read from the Iranian press itself, is that there is a great deal of internal criticism of the function of the Iranian government. And you hear statements by Rouhani, by the head of the Iranian IRGC, that seem to be contradictory, whether it is on the nuclear deal, whether it is on opening up Iran to Western investment. The Grand Ayatollah Khamenei himself has come out with statements that opposed what Rouhani said. So there seems to be some form of internal turmoil going on. Now, who is the moderate and who is the extremist? I think we need to have a very sharp, microscopic ability to be able to discern who is who on this matter. Someone could be moderate on one issue, but very extreme on another issue. So for outsiders like me, it's very difficult to really identify within Iran who are the moderates and who are not. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I say to you and to the Iranian people, Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you very much.